Paul, when we look at the numbers today, down nearly 500 points. Just to give people some context, the last time we saw swings like a day like today, 500 points, then ending down 173, was in the depths of the financial crisis when people wondered if there would be riots on the streets and if they could ever get money out of the ATM again. It's a pretty shocking thing to see swings like this.
Yeah, I mean, the volatility we've been seeing in the last few weeks is, we haven't seen this since 2011, and then before that, the financial crisis. Today's weakness wasn't all strictly this second case of Ebola and what happened, but it's definitely a contributor to what we've seen. We saw weak economic data today, weakness out of Europe. So those are other factors. But this is certainly weighing on sentiment, and market sentiment throughout this whole bull market is something that's been missing and been very fragile. And when we have consumers and the Americans having zero confidence in what the officials are telling us, that causes people just to take a step back and say, I'm not going to be in such a rush to go maybe buy stock XYZ. I'm just going to, because we don't know how this is going to shake out, and we have little confidence in and how things are going to shake out.
Because they don't have it under control, because the UN says if we don't control this at the 60 days, or it's an unprecedented situation. Dr. Van Tolleken, I wanted to play a quick soundbite from you, from an old friend of mine, Jim Cramer, and what he had to say about trading this on CNBC today.
Then midday, we got the incredibly terrible news that the second stricken healthcare worker had actually flown on a commercial plane. And we realized once again that we have no real protocols in this country for handling Ebola. Now we've got to wait another 21 days until we find out who, if anyone, was infected on the plane, which means it could be really hard to bottom until we get past this 3-week period.
For people who think that this is not related to the broader stability to your retirement account, that's something that explains that it indeed is. Yeah. And it is shocking to many people that she could have been on this plane. And even more shocking that the CDC, when she called and said, I have a fever of 99.5, can I get on a plane? And they said yes, when if she was in Liberia, she would have been denied boarding.
Yeah, it's absolutely extraordinary that we are... as Jim says, we do not have a plan that goes from someone presenting with suspected Ebola through to discharge from hospital or death that takes care of every single stage of that. And that isn't that complicated a plan to put together. But we're seeing even the segments of that plan, like what happens when a nurse needs to put on a gown, are not being well covered. And that should really make us worry, because I think when we ask the question, what does an Ebola outbreak in America look like? The answer is not lots of people are going to die of Ebola. Most Americans don't have to worry about that, but they absolutely do have to worry about nurses not turning up to their hospitals, their retirement accounts shrinking, the stock market crashing, those kinds of things. That's what an Ebola outbreak looks like in America, and we're seeing the first feeling of that today.
And that is very significant. You've done an analysis, Paul, versus, in Hong Kong, where the SARS epidemic, which was about as lethal, perhaps even more, where it was hitting. And at that time, according to your numbers, number of people who were flying into Hong Kong down about 66%, hotel occupancy down by more than 60%. Yeah. That would change the entire situation in this country.
I mean, it would be, if confidence gets hurt, it's a big problem. Again, this is a really outlier event that this is going to really become a big outbreak in the U.S., I think.
Right.
But the key is what Jim Cramer was saying before. You remember in 2007, in the early stages of the financial crisis, your conversation with him where he said, they know nothing, and
about
was pounding the table.
They know nothing.
They were completely caught off guard, and it seems like the CDC here is completely caught off guard.
It's just the lack of confidence. It's not that the problem could be that big. It's the fact that they don't seem to know how to handle it.
Exactly. Every day we're hearing different stories, and people are just like, okay, if they don't know what's going on, I'm not going to take any, I'm going to step back on my risk tolerance here.